I'm just waiting for the notification. And we are live. Boom, just like that. I want to thank everyone for tuning in for a special edition of the People's Podcast this Saturday afternoon. Off the record with great panelists and guests. Brother Mustapha, how are you doing, sir? Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Doing outstanding. Only the living can complain, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Excellent. Before we get started, I want to say, first of all, thank you for speaking to me at Savior's Day to let me know that I interviewed your brother so that we could have this great conversation today. Wa alaikum salam, Sister Miriam. Okay, boom. So the first question I want to know is, when did you hear the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad?
Growing up in my household prior to 75, went to the University of Islam up until the transition. So it's always been a message that's been around me from a youth till now.
Yes, sir. Okay, so when you were in the University of Islam prior to 75, what was the environment like? Like, what were your teachers like? And are you still in contact with any of these people today?
Well, that's that only one brother. He's active in our nation now that I'm in contact with. Shout out to Brother Lamar Muhammad in Greensboro, North Carolina. He and I is in heavy contact, and we conversate on a regular basis. But the experience going to the university prior to 75, the brothers went during the day, early in the morning, and the sisters went in the afternoon. But the teachers, you remember, a very clean environment, a very strong masculine environment to where order was the order of the day. So this is something that took a very strong impression upon me. Your shoes clean, suit clean, being on time, and intelligence was definitely the order of the day.
Praise be to Allah. Yes, sir. And do you remember where you were when you first heard that the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad had departed?
In my living room, because my father looked to be very melancholy. He had this chair that he would sit in, and my mother was holding his hand. Tears was running from her eyes, and my father was not one that I would always see emotional. But I saw on his face that he seemed very troubled. We had a radio station that was very Nation of Islam friendly called WBLS. They had announced it. They had said Nation of Islam leader Elijah Muhammad was just announced to us that he passed away. So we want to dedicate this song by Stevie Wonder called "You Are the Apple of My Eye." So they was playing that song on behalf of the nation. Yes, sir.
Okay, man. Okay, so what were your thoughts and emotions at that time?
Well, because the family was stunned. Naturally, that's kinetic. I was stunned. And then when it was communicated, I started crying. My brother started crying. My two sisters, Mahasin and Tahara, they were crying as well because our whole world, our whole infrastructure was the Nation of Islam.
Yes, sir. Okay, and then once that happened, did you all say you were going to go to a funeral, or what was that like?
Well, all the brothers, those that could travel, was mandated to come to Chicago. My father, he was in the ministry. He definitely went out there to Chicago to get his instruction of how the nation would transition from that point on.
Yes, sir. And when he came back, what did he say to you all?
Well, he didn't say anything to us. We just knew that, well, for me, personally speaking, as his son, I just knew that something was different in the air. We was going to the mosque on Sunday, but there was an air of difference because everything that was in place stayed in place, and then it slowly started dissipating. The norms to new norms, even our fight zone transition. They had a cadence that was dedicated to Imam Warif Deen, to get our mind acclimated into knowing that the transition happened. And it was said, who's the man with the master plan? W.D. Muhammad. Who's the man with the master plan? W.D. Muhammad. So this was reorientating us into a new way of thinking and believing.
Yes, sir. And can you follow up with the fight song? What was the fight song adjusted or changed to?
Well, it was just adjusted with his name in place. Instead of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, it would say W.D. Muhammad.
Yes, sir. And when you said that cadence, when would y'all use that? Is this through drill? Is this like at the mosque? Like when would you chant that?
Like instead of Savior's Day, we would have Survival Day. My sister actually, my youngest sister Tahara, she gave Imam Warifdeen an award. She was chosen to give him an award at one of the Black Family Day functions, which was themed Survival Day, 1978.
Okay. Praise be to Allah. Thank you for your history, and thank you all for watching. Can you please let us know what was it? Did you know the Most Honorable Farrakhan before the new dispensation? Like when he was in New York, did you know him? Were you aware of who he was?
Yeah, we definitely knew who he was. He was the prince of the city. His persona was north, east, west, and south. Every radio station was Nation of Islam friendly. Every neighborhood was Nation of Islam friendly. We had the impact of the business infrastructure throughout the 5 boroughs, from Staten Island to Long Island to Brooklyn to Queens to Manhattan. You couldn't go nowhere within New York without knowing the Nation of Islam and knowing who the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan was in that dispensation of time.
Okay, yes, sir. So what made you, or when did you reconnect with the minister once he stood back up?
We tried the Sunni thing. My brother, my sisters. I just want to go back. When the nation transitioned in 1975, 76, the members, whatever they was holding fast to, it was no longer there. So what was the reason for them to hold on to their discipline, hold on to the orientation of our familiar structure? These things were being removed from the members' lives strategically. It wasn't done haphazardly, it wasn't done overnight, but it was done in phases. So once the security structure was phased out, you start seeing slack. The doors now were open to different walks of life, ethnicities to come into the community, because now we're practicing Al-Islam. Our periodical is no longer Muhammad Speaks, it's the Bilalian News. So we're still holding on to a Black identity because, as you know, Bilal was the Mujaddid, the call of prayer. So he was very wise on how he did that. So we had the Bilalian News, and that transitioned into the Muslim Journal. So my mother and father separated, then divorced, and this started becoming a wave throughout the nation. The children now start being introduced to street life. So we would go to Juma, we would go to different Islamic practices, but my brother now and I start becoming of age where we can recognize the difference. We be like, man, this is corny. This is corny. So the gravitational pull that we had of resistance at that time, because the order in the discipline was so strong, but now that polarity was broken. So now the street now had an impact. Now imagine your whole life is the nation, and then you have to go to public school. So now we're going to public school, and we're being taught at that time the blue-eyed devil, the white man. So now we're in his school. So we were shell-shocked.
Yes, sir.
All I knew was taking instructions from people that looked like me, male or female. So now I'm being introduced to public school. My grades in the university was all A's. So now making the adjustment period in the public schools, your grades naturally starts to falter because now
Absolutely.
there's a new orientation happening.
Yes, sir.
Emotional trauma start disturbing families because this is a new wave. And that was some of the post traumatic experience prior to 75.
Yes, sir. And thank you for your transparency and your history. And thank you all for watching. Walaikum salam, Brother Robert Abdullah. And my sister Miriam says, wow, shaking my head about the cadence being changed. Okay, I'm assuming that's what she was referring to. My next point to you is, now you go from prior to 75. Now you're moving 1976, 77, 78. When did you hear the Most High Louis Farrakhan say he was standing up? And how long did it take for you to make an adjustment to follow him?
Now at this time, my parents is divorced. It's the 80s. So we would go visit my father every other weekend along with my sisters. And when we went to his house, one day we were walking near Eastern Parkway. This is in Brooklyn. And the minister was teaching on Eastern Parkway, the upstairs. So we got excited because we saw something that was familiar to us. I mean, it just resonated.
Yes, sir. Sir.
We said, Daddy, there goes the brothers. He said, oh, Brother Farrakhan, he's still in a time warp. He doesn't want to give Elijah up. Now, my father is just following suit.
Yes, sir.
What he's saying. So this is not to cast any dispersion on my father nor my mother. So I just want to clear that, because it's not their fault. Everything was predetermined how it's supposed to roll out. So my father was like, hey, Brother Farrakhan, he's in a time warp. Basically like poor brother.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And you've heard in the early 80s lectures, this was the sentiment around the country regarding anyone who still wants to follow in that way. So that was the first time that we saw the brothers, and we tried a reconnection, but that was stifled because we're Sunni Muslims.
Yes, sir.
That was just for that, a message for that time.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Meanwhile, drunkenness, nakedness, indecency, and unsafe neighborhoods is now starting to become the norm. So that was the first time, and we now start pulling away from my father's influence, and the streets start having more credibility because now hip hop is the new rise. Hip hop is the new platform for a conversation of what's happening to us in the Black community, specifically in New York.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And then, somebody who was very intelligent put the minister on one of their records, and you start hearing the minister and that vibration. So we was always attracted to rap acts that had a conscious platform. So that was now the re-indoctrination of what I would say the come home message subliminally.
Okay, wonderful. So once you hear the come home message, when did you actually come home?
So now this is like 1989. Public Enemy is exploded on the scene. My brother and I, we went to a club called Latin Quarters, and Public Enemy was there. And the S1Ws, as I remember him saying to you, they had such a presence, and the presence was profound because it was familiar.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And the whole club was just more of like in a mosque room setting. Because of what Brother Chuck D was saying, Farrakhan the Prophet, I think you need to listen to him. What he can say to you, follow for now, hell what the people say. So black is back. So we started going to the Slave Theater in Brooklyn, which is on Bedford Avenue and Fulton Street. So this was a house to where any nationalist, anybody that had a anti-government message, Stokely Carmichael. So you would never know who you would have. Brother Khalid Muhammad, may Allah be pleased with him, would come through. Brother Conrad Muhammad, who was the youth minister in New York at that time.
Yes, sir.
So we was back and forth during that time. And my brother, he was having a child at the time. So life was more serious for him. So he said, man, I'm going to the mosque. So I'm looking, I said, man, we don't have a couple more minutes. He's like,
Yeah.
I'm going in. In our neighborhood friends, with some of them would go as well. But we knew that this is where we were supposed to be. There was a movie called Brooklyn's Finest. Don Cheadle, his character has said, these streets have an expiration date.
Yes, sir.
So our expiration date was definitely running out, and we had to return home. So 1990 officially is when I started coming out to the mosque in Harlem, and I was able to. Matter of fact, the mosque was ending when I was on my way, and Brother Khalid Abdul Muhammad was on his way out. And that was me returning and enrolling on my own strength and power, because when your children born to parents that's in Islam,
Yes,
they
sir.
enroll. You didn't choose yet.
Yes, sir.
You just found the orders of your household. As it says in the Quran, only Allah makes Muslims, and He knows best where to place His message. So 1990 was my newborn day to return back to the fold.
Praise be to Allah. Okay, wonderful. Now it's 1990. Can you set the scene for us? Walaikum salam, Brother Jihad. Can you please set the scene for us in New York, in Harlem? You going into the mosque? Who's training you? Who are the officials? What's the environment like?
Minister Conrad was the minister in New York City. He had a strong pulse on New York City. We had Captain Dennis, the great Captain Dennis. He was the captain at the time.
Yes, sir.
Very charismatic. They were the dynamic duo here in New York City. Nothing, no dope deal, nothing went down without us knowing about it. The hip hop scene was aflame. You had Naughty by Nature. You had a Tribe Called Quest. Whoever you can think about was impactful at that time. The Nation of Islam had a thumb on those artists. Our training, there was a lot of movement, a lot of travel. The minister was hitting the college circuit heavily. So New York definitely took point on a lot of those excursions. So my reorientation, my training, stuff that was already in me subconsciously just started coming forth to the forefront and start becoming second nature.
Praise be to Allah. And now that when you're back acclimated, where does your function immediately go when you come into the mosque? Are you in the ministry, military, protocol, secretary? Like where's your main function?
Well, when you came in during that dispensation of time, the order is train 2 up, 2 down. You want to be efficient in every role within the nation, because you never know where you'll be dispersed throughout the country.
Yes, sir.
So you want to be able to hit boots on the ground, and you'll be able to reproduce yourself in another, like a cell. It splits. Yes, so my first post assignment was naturally security. You started outside, and once you mastered outside, then you were brought on the inside. Now you're doing interior security.
Yes, sir.
And once you master that, you can sit front rostrum. Now, at this time, this is a post where lectures was 2 hours and change. 2 hours and change. So your stamina had to be up there. And this is why, the FOI on Monday nights during that time, there was a Saturday, pardon me, there was a rigorous workout effort. Your push-ups, your jumping jacks, making sure that you're eating well, your study acumen was up to par. You couldn't even come into any circles of conversation if you couldn't sound off on certain premier lectures that lays the foundation of the mission.
Yes, sir.
Because you got to know that there's a difference between the two, between the mission and the teachings. Because the mission is nonstop. The teachings can come from somebody who's on the corner with dreadlocks.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But he doesn't want to be part of the mission. I just want to point that out. So you want to be mission orientated, and you would like to be also have a grasp on the teaching while you're evolving with the message. Because it's not an overnight thing. As you mature, you are supposed to mature with the message, that you can speak to all walks of life. You can start the alphabets from Z to A or from A to Z.
Excellent. Yes, sir. And thank you for your transparency, and thank you all for continuing to watch. My next question is, what was it like? You said Dr. Khaled was on his way out of New York. What was your interactions with him? Did he ever come back to New York while you were there, or how was that?
Well, as you know, New York is a very important city to the nation. So Brother Khaled was in and out of New York. He had relationships with the different various uh, organizations here, whether it's uh, branches of the Panther Party, branches of SNCC, branches of CORE. They weren't prominent, but they still had a sway in the Black community, and we always are looking for alliances.
Yes, sir.
Because it's human resources is the greatest resource.
Yes, sir.
And Brother Khaled was very efficient at that. So he was in and out of the city. And our interaction with Brother Khaled, if you know anything about him, he's a very stern brother, but he means well. He meant well. So that was our interaction. Speak only when you're spoken to. And if he invited you into his personal space, you would know. But
Okay.
outside of that is just making sure we handle the business of the day.
Praise be to Allah. Okay, what was it like working with Minister Conrad?
Minister Conrad, definitely a collegiate mind. He was more attracted to the economics. He was attracted to our political positions that you could read on the back of the final call, what the Muslims want, what the Muslims believe. These were strengths of Brother Conrad. In his development of the spiritual side is where he got short-sighted, that we would later find out, which gave him trouble at that time. But his political position and his economic position was very effective. Everything worked for the time that it was supposed to be. And everybody is always going to be who they're supposed to be in that dispensation of time. As the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, until someone puts a period to our life, then you can judge what did that life produce. So we're a moving reality.
Absolutely, and praise be to Allah. What about you spoke of Captain Dennis? How was it working being under Captain Dennis during that time?
Well, Brother Dennis, as you know, anyone that knows him, he's a very flavorful personality. He has a gift of touching people and affecting lives upon sight. He was a very generous man with his personality, his energy. So he taught me a lot and helped me in my furthering my Islamic life. He taught from experience and example more than just saying. This is why he's impactful to this day. He was somebody who would roll up his sleeves to show you how to live a life as a Muslim, in opposed to people who are more straitjacket. You're not going to survive this lifestyle if you're a straitjacket. Captain Dennis had a way with himself to make it very enjoyable and fun to be a Muslim.
Praise be to Allah. Okay, wonderful. My next question: how was it like working with Reverend Ben Chambers at the time when he came to New York and became the minister?
He was unique because his expertise is organizing. We retrieved him when he was already with an organization. I remember we were on a detail in Baltimore. You had all of the organizations, NAACP, you name it, was at this specific church. The name of it slips my mind at this time. But the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan retrieved him during that period of time and made him the point person in New York City, because I think at that time we were putting together the Million Family March or the Millions More movement, one of them. But he was very instrumental in making sure New York, in the relationships that he had, supported our efforts, and we were successful during his dispensation of time. As it says in our lesson, we don't care about the poor part.
Yes, sir.
We care about the best part, and the best part of that brother helped us to move the culture forward in the restructuring of the Nation of Islam here in the wilderness of North America.
Praise be to Allah. Excellent. My next question is, what you're in New York, it's the climate may be hot back then, and the attack on the minister of the nation. Did you ever fear for your life? And if so, how did you overcome the fear?
Wow, Brother Josh, wow. Um, fear was not a factor. Well, naturally, when you're security minded, we think in preventive measures. We're not reactionary. If you follow the guide in the guidance, fear comes about when you're not prepared.
Yes, sir.
Mostly. And fear is a natural chemical that the body secretes to know that what you're doing is something that's serious, and you should not be arrogant. So the the FOI is constantly training to meet and overcome all obstacles in his path. So that means that an obstacle should be coming. So if
Yes,
we're
sir.
constantly training and preparing ourselves, we don't have to get ready. So any event that we would have to engage in, we were ready for the task at hand.
Praise be to Allah. Excellent. My next question is, how did you get in to become a stylist?
Um, well, I have to say I am my father's son
Mm,
and my mother's son. The combination of Sister Anissa and Brother Mustapha.
mm,
Both of my parents, my mother and father, were very stylish. My mother was a great homemaker. She was an excellent cook. She was a social elite. My father, his style was comparable to none. So now these is mental snapshots coming up as a child, and then being exposed to seeing different types of elders in our community, the way that they would put clothing together had a real profound effect on me.
mm,
And coming in and out of the mosque, brother would say, "Man, you look sharp. You look sharp." And this is something that always used to bother me because, vanity is a very peculiar sin. It can really take you off the point. So I always resisted the compliments.
mm, mm,
Um, but it's not until recently, probably the last 4 years, I said, "Man, this is a gift that Allah gave you, fool."
mm.
So it's a means to contact people because what's more universal than style
Yes, sir.
in fashion? So when I started paying more attention to it and organizing the gift, it's now become something that is um, put money in my pocket. So now I'm have taken it to be very serious. And when you see how brothers and sisters are dressing today, they're not dressing. It's just
Mm,
who can top one another in nakedness.
mm, mm, mm.
So the need for knowing how to put clothing together is there. So it's a wide open market. Why should not someone who's coming through this venue, which is the teachings of Islam, um, you can bring style to the world in a way that is unique in our own.
Wonderful. And thank you, sir, for doing that. And thank you all for watching. I want to read Brother Jihad said, I love this brother's energy. He's definitely a fruit of that Farrakhan tree. And powerful question. Thank you, sir, very much, Brother Jihad. And thank you all for continuing to watch. I have a brief commercial interruption. I want to say
Yes, sir.
Supreme Men's Clothing, speaking of fashion, in St. Louis. 10835 West Florissant Avenue, St. Louis, Missouri, 63136. The phone number is 314-528-5555. Please pull up on our brother in St. Louis for some fashion and style. Also, Supreme Spring Water if you need some spring water. I want to say that my brother has a video production company, Rashad and Jamal. If you need some editing, they're working on some big stuff right now. So thank them for sponsoring the podcast. My sister Miriam's book, ABC I Love Me, is on Amazon, the coloring book as well. Also, my second book, which is a children's book, Cleopatra, is on Amazon.
Outstanding.
My father's book that he just sold out at Savior's Day, Soldier in the Movement of Christ, Abdul Sharif Muhammad, Part 1, in the beginning. Boom. Excellent. All right. I want to tell anyone who has a business that wants to sponsor the podcast, J Imagination, Cash App, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I'll promote your business. Okay. Back to our brother Mustapha. My next question is, sir, what has been your greatest trial since you've been in the nation, and how did you overcome that?
Well, I have 2 children.
Mm,
Mustapha and Fatima. And the minister just said it is, there's nothing more painful than your children not following the path that you're on.
mm, mm.
Because you know that there's no greater message than the coming of God in the person of a man.
Yes,
And
sir.
to have that prerequisite as your start engine in life will give you life in abundance. And these are things that I want to share with my children on a regular basis and show them that they can live this life. And it's very simple. So that has been a pain that I have to walk with because only Allah makes Muslims. And the only thing that I can do is be the best example for them and keep myself in a position to, if Allah chooses, that He settles my affairs and I'm ready to receive them at any time. I'm also now a grandfather. Um, his name is Hermes. I was with them this past June in Jacksonville, Florida.
Mm,
Um, both of them are stunning children. My son is very talented. He sings. I used
okay.
to sing as well. My daughter sings. They both write their own music.
Mm,
My son, he was signed to Murder Inc. So he had a record contract.
okay. Okay.
You're right. So the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. So with the gifts comes great responsibility. So I definitely want to be there for both of them with the gifts that they have. If it's not structured, it can be their demise.
Yes, sir. Okay. Excellent. And brother, Jihad, it says he reminds me of student minister Ali Muhammad from Brooklyn, New York, but now resides in Tampa, Florida. That is his. This is his older brother, brother Jihad. And my sister Miriam says, please subscribe to the historic and timely podcast on YouTube. Josh Muhammad off the record. Thank you very much, sister Miriam. Okay, wonderful. My next question is, what has been your greatest joy in your tenure in the Nation of Islam?
My greatest joy, I definitely have to pay it forward to my mother and father. My mother, formerly Sister Bernice 13X, my father, Brother Claire X, who now is Brother Mustapha. Um, Salahuddin, who named myself. He named my brother Ali, formerly Sean. I was
Mm,
formerly St. Clair,
mm,
but we received our holy names in 1972.
mm, mm.
I have a sister named Tahara. I have a sister named Mahasin. But I would have to, if any joy, any victory, is because my mother and father was wise enough to accept the invitation to Islam and return the favor and raise their children in like manner. So when that period came in my life, that I too would accept the invitation to Islam to improve my life and be a better human being that can contribute to humanity as a whole. So that is a walking joy that I have.
Praise be to Allah. Yes, sir. Okay, my next question is from 19 in the 70s to now, what has sustained your faith and what advice would you give to younger people
Mm.
to keep them 10 toes down and believe?
That is an awesome question. That's a great question. As the Christians would say, salvation is personal.
Mm, mm,
Um,
mm.
Islam is personal. If you do not take your belief personal,
Yes, sir.
it's only going to serve you as much as you're serving yourself it. The Quran said, what man has a river, paraphrasing, in front of his home, he does not bathe.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So what sustains me? What gives me my youth? What gives me my vitality? It is the word of Allah.
Mm, mm.
And you have to move the word into a modern text. What worked for my mother and father is separate for me. What works for my brother Ali is separate from me, but yet we have harmony because we both are agreeable that we must feed on this word. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is a living principle of what sustained your life because he did not know that he would play such a significant role prior to 75.
Yes, sir.
But his feeding of the word put him in the best position that when Brother Jabril gave him that book,
Yes, sir.
and he struggled with him with this book. It allowed him, the word, to find a firm resting place in him. So for myself, feeding on the word daily, as the Christians say, I feed on the word daily, that you may have life in abundance. And I'm paraphrasing again, Brother
Yes, sir.
Joshua, but the meaning and the effect is the same. If you do not constantly find yourself turning pages and then experience life and then turn pages again, you will not become a witness bearer of this life-giving teaching, because that is literal. Like you just said, man, I didn't know you were that old.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You know, I'll be 52 by Lord's permission in August. And when I'm moving throughout the city here in New York, this is a constant thing. You're 50, what? Let me see your ID. So now we gotta go back. So it's not just the diet, it's not just the eating. It is the living word that God is a man
Allahu Akbar.
that sustains my life. So I am very appreciative and thankful to my parents and Allah coming in the person of Master Father Muhammad for raising the most honorable Elijah Muhammad and giving us his divine reminder, leader, teaching guide, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan.
Excellent. And thank you all for watching. And thank you for your great teaching today, this afternoon, sir. My next question is, what would you like your legacy to be, sir?
I would love for my legacy to be that out of the millions of people, billions of people on the planet Earth, I was one that was willing to put God back at the center of the universe. Because clearly, the enemy of God has, he thinks that he moved him out of the center. But I want to be a participant, because none of us knows the names of the prior gods that raised the mountains and did all these wonderful things on the earth. I just want my name to be added into the millions of others that made Allah's will be born through me through my lineage. So if there's anything of legacy to be said of Brother Mustapha, he was a willing vessel that wants to make Allah's great commission known on the planet Earth under the direction, because it has to be a right way to do it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Because all of us are anointed, right, in one way or another, but there's an appointed anointed one to show us how to do it without having that much of pain and misery in trying to do it off on your own. So if there was any legacy, that's what I would want it to be. And I want to apologize that I did not open up in prayer, because anytime that we speak on these type of conversations, we definitely want to open up in his name. So I just want to say for the record, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Oh Allah, we thank you for this moment, this opportunity to engage on a high level conversation with our dear brother Joshua, who is a legacy within his own right. So we appreciate you doing this, brother Joshua.
Oh, praise be to Allah. Now, my next question was, are you in the ministry?
Not at all. Not at all. Everywhere I go, people ask me, am I in the ministry? You should be in the ministry. Are you? When I go to the gym, all walks of life, are you some type of motivational speaker? But like my father was in the ministry class of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, so it's in my heart. It's in my soul. I can't even help myself.
Yes, sir.
But what's for you is for you. And if that is where Allah wills me to be, I guess I will be there.
Praise be to Allah. I want to thank you all for watching. And I want to thank you very much, sir, for your spirit, your energy, and the words. I want to put this on YouTube this evening. Like, subscribe for people who are watching, so we can continue to hear more of you. I look forward to having conversations with you in person now that we are connected. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
About many facets of life, but especially about style, because I'm fascinated by fashion.
Well, you can definitely go to my website, which is stylewhisperer.com. That's style with 2 L's.
Whisper.com.
Right. So, style is something that's personal. That's why it's a whisper.
Perfect. And thank you, sir. And I want to say on behalf of my parents and my family that we thank you for your sacrifice. We thank your family, your children and grandchildren for their sacrifice as well, sir,
Yes, sir.
to establish Islam.
And
You know,
I had the great opportunity of working with your father. We did NOI security. Was at Uptown Records. That was one of the accounts. I had secured a contract here in Brooklyn called Clinton Hills. That was something that we gave over into NOI security. So I had great experience with your father as well, and he's definitely someone that had an impact on my life as well when he came up with the black box. He said, "Don't." He said, "Don't judge your father. Just call him and say I love you and hang up." So this was at one of our FOI classes, and he talked about Little Bo Peep. So your father is definitely impacted my life as well. So I'm most appreciative for his journey up to this point. We love him here in New York, brother.
Praise be to Allah. And quick question about Uptown Records. Now, Uptown Records is who was a part of Uptown Records? Like what y'all were doing security for? Like who was a part of
that? That was Andre Harrell. This is right when Suge Knight was putting certain people under siege.
Yes, sir.
And they said the only force that can calm this person down would be the Nation of Islam. And that's when Uptown Records brought us under, and P. Diddy, Sean Combs, Puff Daddy at that point had just left Uptown Records. So definitely was appreciative for the experience there with NOI security. So there's more levels in history that we can unpack, but we appreciate for this first conversation. Hopefully there's many to come.
Absolutely. And thank you very much, sir. And thank you all for watching. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.